Good morning, everyone. My name is C.K. Hoffler, and I am chairman of the board, or chairwoman of the board, of the internationally recognized, renowned organization, Rainbow Push Coalition. It is indeed an honor for me to be here today as the attorney I've been Reverend Jackson's attorney for 32 years, and have had the pleasure of working with these organizations. And it is such a great honor to welcome this magnificent panel. And Reverend Jackson, I'm going to introduce you, even though you need no introduction, because there's not a way, there's not a day, there's not a moment that passes that we cannot not recognize that each of us, even as officers of the court, African American, Latino, Latina, Asian American, and people in this world stand on your shoulders because of the fight that you have had to launch for all of us for decades. So we salute you. But I wanted to welcome everybody to this wonderful panel. These panelists are first in their respective communities. And today, because of what's happening around us, because of the climate in this country, we felt it only fitting to talk about policing, to talk about law enforcement, to talk about police unions, and to talk about the impact that each one of our magnificent panels has had in their community and the challenges. So against that backdrop, I want to just say a word for us to really recognize one of our fallen sheroes, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Ginsburg, who passed recently. She was a purveyor of justice, a fighter, one of my sheroes. She fought for equality. She was a big fan of Reverend Jesse Jackson, Rainbow Push, and all of our efforts. So we salute her, and we know that she's resting in peace. And she fought and held on until she could fight no more. So we must pick up the mantle. So against that backdrop, Reverend Jackson, I'd like to just say a few words about you. You've been fighting for 6 decades in this space for racial equality, racial justice, social justice, so that African Americans, Latinos, and people of color could walk through corporate doors and could break through glass ceilings. For women, for men, for children, for the least of these, we thank you for all of your fights, and that you were able to assemble and a panel that has this kind of a panel that has the first of so many is because of you as a human being, as a civil rights activist. So there's a famous Portuguese expression that I think is appropriate to begin our discussion. It is, a luta continua, vitória é certa. It means the struggle continues, but victory is certain. So when I think about Kim Foxx, the state attorney for Cook County, who runs an office of over 800 attorneys, 1,500 employees, the first of the first of the first. When I think of the struggle and the fight that she's faced outside protesters coming to defeat her in Cook County, we are honored to support her and to let her know. And now I'm speaking as also president of the National Bar Association, because you're one of my members. We support you. In fact, all of you, including Ms. Valdez, we support you. And that's what today is about. They were facing 3 pandemics: COVID-19, election suppression, and police brutality. So I'd like to direct my first question to the Cook County State Attorney, Kim Foxx. And I'd like you to discuss, just with for our viewers, your journey and some of the issues that you've confronted with gun violence, given the very courageous positions that you take.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me on this panel. Thank you, Reverend Jackson, for just being a steadfast leader for the last 60 years, so my entire lifetime. And since I've been in office, I have not had a crisis in which the Reverend has not called me and held my hand through it and prayed with me. And so I'm honored. And for my fellow colleagues who are on the call, many of whom I consider to be family, my sisters, Kim and Marilyn, and for the others that I've not yet had an opportunity to meet personally, thank you for being on the panel with us. And to Erica, the head of the NBPA, who works in our office and has done amazing things. It's just an honor to be with you all. It has been a journey, to say the least, for those who did not know the history of the assassination of Fred Hampton, that it was in fact orchestrated through the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, and that legacy that has hung with this office for the past 50 years. I came into office in 2016, a year in which we were reckoning with the police killing of Laquan McDonald, a 17-year-old boy who was pumped with 16 bullets as he lay on the ground. That had come in the wake of the work that Maryland had done in Baltimore and the death of Freddie Gray, or what Kim had seen in Ms. Ferguson with the death of Mike Brown. All of those instances were happening as I was coming into office, as Maryland had just gotten there, as Kim had come into office. And so 2020 feels eerily reminiscent to me. Eerily reminiscent that we have seen this repetition of Black death at the hands of law enforcement and communities crying out for change. It's also eerily reminiscent in that 2016 was the bloodiest year we'd had in Chicago since 1999. And in fact, 2020, we are outpacing 2016. And people would say to you that when you're dealing with the issue of violence, the gun violence that we're seeing in Chicago, that you cannot concern yourself with criminal justice reform. You cannot concern yourself with the issues that got you here around police accountability, that there is a hijacking of the conversation around justice reform and what we're seeing in our streets. I've spent the last couple of weeks talking more about property damage, which is important. We ought to be talking about, and not enough talking about the structures that need to be in place to ensure that we don't revisit where we are in these times. And so when I came into office in 2016, much like as I run for re-election now, it has been on the premise of keeping our communities safe and having a criminal justice system that is fair and equitable. Because the truth is, people will not engage in our justice system if they don't believe that it has legitimacy. That in the neighborhoods that have the highest levels of violence, they are probably those who are least likely to call the police. They would much rather handle it themselves if they believe that they don't know if they're going to get a Jason Van Dyke, the type of police officer who killed Laquan McDonald, or Sergeant Watts, who was shaking down drug dealers in the Ida B. Wells public housing project, planting drugs, planting guns, that if their experience with law enforcement has been so fractured that when violence occurs in the community, they would rather deal with it themselves, we're going to be in this perpetual silence or cycle of violence. And so we can't separate dealing with public safety and the integrity of our justice system. They go hand in hand. And so when we're seeing what we're seeing in the streets right now, and we see violence up across the country, it's not just Chicago. I'm sure my colleagues can tell you where they live, they're also seeing it. And if we continue to have this half conversation around what do we do about violence and not do anything around criminal justice reform, we're going to keep revisiting this. And so we've done things like, go after wrongful convictions, rebuilding our conviction integrity unit, vacating over 100 convictions just in the last 3.5 years. We've done things like work for marijuana legalization. And I'm not condoning marijuana use, but what I know is that when John Boehner can now sit on the board of a marijuana company and now make millions of dollars while people who live in impacted neighborhoods have convictions on their records, I can't sit with that. And so we baked into our law the ability to have those convictions automatically expunged. We also stopped going after people for low-level, nonviolent offenses. And that's because, to me, how do I justify to that mother who's trying to find what happened to the killer of her child that we spend more resources going after low-level retail theft than we do after guns? And so we created the first of its kind gun crime strategies unit, placing our assistance in neighborhoods impacted by violence. I'm so proud to be on this panel with Erica, like I said, from our office, who is a pioneer in that work, where we've seen a dramatic reduction where we place our assistance. And so that comes with a little strife, a little pushback. The police unions have made no bones about their disdain for me. You talk about the march on my office on April 1st, 2019, over 150 members of the Fraternal Order of Police and their supporters, including 4 white nationalist groups, including members of QAnon, showed up at my office attempting to run me out of town. And they made no bones about why they were there. They claimed it was about one celebrity case, but they told the truth, that it was about my reforms on bail reform. It was about my efforts on marijuana. It was about my efforts on low-level convictions, that I wasn't acting in the way that they wanted their state's attorney to act. And I'll end with this. I didn't get into this role to rubber stamp practices and policies of the Fraternal Order of Police. I got into this role to keep our community safe.
Let's turn to Camilla Valdez. You're the first Latina county prosecutor in the state of New Jersey, and as a Passaic, New Jersey. You have Dominican heritage. You're a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha.
My journey here was an improbable journey. I was sitting at the U.S. Attorney's office, working for then U.S. Attorney Chris Christie, minding my own business, trying cases, and dealing with the fact that I'm a special needs mom. I have two beautiful autistic daughters, and I was navigating that whole spectrum. And so when the opportunity came to be approached for this opportunity, I really didn't think it would happen. In New Jersey, all county prosecutors and our attorney general are appointed, so we don't run. It was an unlikely proposition for then Governor Corzine, a Democrat, to appoint someone who was working for, who would be his opponent. But, here we are. And by way of background, I came to the position because I was born in the Bronx and raised in Newark as a daughter of Dominican immigrants. And the Bronx, like Newark, wonderful, culturally rich societies, communities that have its share of issues, violence, addiction, poverty, gender bias, things that we seldom don't talk about. So my path here really has been to serve. And I am a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha and sit on so many different boards and organizations because I find that as a law enforcement official, we need to work in collaboration with other groups to be able to, first of all, deal with the loneliness and the isolation of being a person of color, dealing with these issues, dealing with difficult issues where when I was first appointed in 2009, I was 38 years old. And I came into the position to deal with chiefs of police and members of law enforcement that had been police officers longer than I had been alive. And the initial shock of, this girl, really, now being the chief law enforcement official in Passaic County, it was a learning curve for them. It was a learning curve for me. I now have had the opportunity to sit in this seat for 11 years, and any type of criminal justice reform and victim advocacy, I have been able to sit at that table.
It seems like it's been forever since we lost our dear brother, Freddie Gray. And since there was that discussion, but it's only been 5 years. And our next sister who we're going to bring on was at the helm and handled that whole situation, the indictments with professionalism, by the law. She did what she needed to do under a lot of criticism. She was so young. She's still very young. I'd say I'm y'all's age, but the reality is, if I've been representing Reverend for 32 years, I can't be 37. In my mind, but I can't be. But Marilyn Mosby just took charge. And when we saw her on the international stage doing what so many couldn't do, sometimes you want to do it, but you have to have the facts and law, just couldn't do. That was a moment of glory, and we have to call it what it is. So, Marilyn, we thank you and salute you for what you've done, what you continue to do every single day. And we'd like to talk to you a little bit about what it was like for you, what it continues to be like for you. Having taken that bold move in your community when you had so much adversity nationally, police unions on your back, and threats. If you could share with the viewers and the listeners what that experience was and what your thoughts are going forward in your city.
So first and foremost, I just want to say thank you, CK. I appreciate all of the work that you do as you started this whole session, recognizing and acknowledging the Reverend Jesse Jackson, what I've always understood and what I constantly reiterate, Kim, both my Kims will tell you, Kim Fox and Kim Garner, that it's always been greater than me, right? Like, it was never about Marilyn Mosby. It's about what Marilyn Mosby represents to dismantling this racist criminal justice system. And so I stand on the shoulders of Reverend Jesse Jackson, and I just want to say thank you for all that you've done. And I would be remiss. And Erica, I love you. I appreciate all that you do. Camilla, thank you. You are representing. We are people of color. We are one. We need to recognize that. But I think when we look at also just the moment that we're in, CK, right now, right? Like, after the tragic loss of an iconic Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was the architect, I mean, literally the architect of the elimination of gender discrimination in this country. Her death in and of itself changes the balance of power in the Supreme Court. And what is on the ballot right now is justice. And what I can tell you, what that means for not just us, but for our children and potentially our grandchildren, is justice is literally on the ballot in what is one of the most critical elections of our lifetime. And so before I speak about what justice looks like and what my experience was, I can tell you what justice does not look like, right? Justice does not look like failing to put on a turn signal and ending up dead. Justice does not look like allegedly selling loose cigarettes and ending up dead. Justice does not look like allegedly passing a $20 bill during a global pandemic for groceries and ending up dead. And so, justice isn't the refusal to see the humanity of Black people in this country. And so when I look at what's happening in this moment and in this time, Black people in this country, we're utterly sickened. We're Kim Garner, Kim Fox, we're on a text thread, and we are utterly sickened by time and time again, the murders of Black people on camera at the hands of the police. And so what is this moment right now? I'm incredibly encouraged. I'm scared, right? Like, I need us to understand the importance of mobilization and getting out and voting and getting this man who has shown us the ability of changing the course of our country in a matter of 4 years. He has taken regression to a whole nother point. So I'm encouraged that, according to the AP polls, the veil of ignorance has been lifted from Americans in this country, particularly white Americans, regarding race relations and police brutality against Black people in this country, and that our perceptions have, in essence, shifted and changed since 5 years ago. As you have highlighted, 5 years ago, it was a mere 5 years ago, since I charged police officers with the death of an innocent 25-year-old Black man who made eye contact with police in a high-crime neighborhood, who was unconstitutionally arrested, placed into a metal wagon, headfirst, feet shackled and handcuffed, and whose pleas, after his spine was partially severed in the back of that wagon, his pleas for medical attention were ignored. I'm encouraged that those perceptions have been shifted. I'm encouraged that Black Lives Matter is no longer a controversial term, right? Where people are now recognizing that in order for every life to matter, ours has to matter as well. But we have so much more work to do. And so I think that in this moment, when we talk about the progressive prosecutor movement, where you have prosecutors like my sisters, and not just in law, but my sisters in life, Kim Garner and Kim Fox, we're succeeding because voters, the community, both of them just got reelected overwhelmingly. I got reelected overwhelmingly, right? Voters are paying attention to these races when previously we were just going in and electing these individuals with these tough on crime approaches, 79% of the individuals making the decisions in this country are white males. 95% of the prosecutors in this country are white. We represent a mere 1% of all elected prosecutors of color. That's unacceptable. And so what is this moment speaking to? I think that it's time. We got work to do. We have a lot of work to do, but I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged because with the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we understand that she's passed the baton and the mantle of justice, and the fight is now on us.
We have the birthplace of the civil rights movement, where Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a Black man. And here we have the district attorney for the largest county in Alabama, Danny Carr.
Thank you for including me in this discussion. And I've watched Kim Garner and Kim Foxx and Marilyn Mosby and all of those three strong African-American women leading the way. And Camilla, it's wonderful to hear your story. But I'm getting goosebumps here because I made sure my daughter, who just graduated from Auburn University, is about to start law school. I wanted her to hear this and to see these women and to understand that, don't ever let anybody tell you what you can or can't do and how strong you can or can't be just because you're a woman who's an African-American woman. So let me just first say thank you to all of the women on here who are leading the way. And Reverend Jackson, thank you. I'm down here in the deep South in Alabama. I'm just a blue dot in a big red state. And I'm here because I'm standing on the shoulders of men like you.
Now, next we have a bad sister. We just have to call it what it is. A bad sister who took on the governor of Missouri. I mean, she just took on the governor, blaming her for the city of St. Louis homicide. And she went ahead and just said, no, enough is enough. Yeah. Sick and tired of being sick and tired. It ain't going to happen no more. I'm done, through. Talk to the hand, all of that. And she did it with such grace. And every single day, when I saw Kimberly Garner on TV, because she was on TV all the time, I felt like saying power to the people, just walking up in the morning and just, you know what I mean? How you feel that way. Actually, I felt that way about all of y'all. When I saw you all, when I've seen you all on TV fighting the fight, to take on the police unions like you all have, and to sue the police unions. And we know the life threats that go along with doing the things that you all do every day. But to just take on the state and the governor, and Mound City Bar was behind you, and to do the things that you've done, to be the first African-American circuit attorney in St. Louis, where you practiced, and just to do all the things that you've done, Kimberly Garner, we just want to hear from you.
I just want to say I'm humbled and honored to be here with everyone, Reverend Jesse Jackson, my sisters in the struggle, Mr. Danny Carr, Ms. Valdez, Erica. But what we need to really pay attention while we're in this moment in time, we have to pay attention to, not just we as African-American female reform-minded prosecutors, but we actually have to understand that we can't do this alone. Everybody says it's not about us, and I support what Marilyn Mosby is saying. It's not about us. But what it's about is the human dignity and respect that we as prosecutors bring to our discretion, that many people challenge that look like us, that actually don't look like us, and sit on the sidelines and critique us and tell us that we're somehow the strange being because we choose to apply the law equally and just and fairly for everyone. This is not just our laws apply to Black people. Our laws apply to everyone. And I hope that the legal community that we know is very conservative, whether you're Black or white, within it. And everybody wants to figure out a way to get somewhere, to become something. But to me, we have to be true thought leaders and actually leaders in doing what's right. And one of the things, this was hard for me to do because I see my sisters like Marilyn Mosby and my sister Kim Foxx, who go through so much that they're not even telling you. They tell you in little ways that I had feces mailed to my office this last week because it's a normal day for us. And people say it's not about us. But what I don't like is when I have people, and I'm not talking to these people on the panel, say that, how can we help? How can you help is do the right thing. And if you think racism is okay, then I shouldn't have to tell you where we're going. You should know where we're going when we're the first. Because we have Reverend Jesse Jackson, who paved the way for us, and many of the people like him who made it possible for us to sit in these roles. But if we do not have people fighting the same way they fought back in the day to allow us to be here, we have another fight that's hidden. You can't see the enemy. The enemy looks just like you. The enemy talks like you. They stand next to you and they smile in your face, all the while they're undermining you. And one of the things that's most disgusting that I think right now in this period of time, we have powerful people who choose to attack African-American female reform-minded prosecutors. And actually, we have people come to our house and tell us we should be dead, dragged in the streets. Our bodies should be hung with nooses with the KKK. This is normal in Missouri, and we know Alabama, but Missouri, Chicago, Baltimore, we also have people hiding by this COVID-19 pandemic, that more people are suffering. More people are unemployed. More people are talking about violent crime, and they're using this COVID-19 pandemic, that all the health disparities, all the broken systems that we already know exist are highlighted even more now, and they're blaming us. So I hope these like-minded legal entities here, reverends and pastors and people who want to get into this comfortable conversation, we need boots on the ground people fighting day to day with us, because I'm in those rooms where I'm the only female. I'm in those rooms where I'm the only woman. I'm in those rooms where I have people of color who are on my police department, and they look and they sound the same way as these police unions that no one wants to call out. No. And everybody's scared. We have prosecutors who are held hostage by the local investigative agency because they tell you, like they told me, I'm going to make you lose your livelihood. I'm going to make sure you are going to lose your bar license. They told me if I do my job, they're going to make sure they make my life a living hell. So I hope, I'm sorry, Reverend, I know we got pastors on here. Sorry for saying hell. But I just want to say, I need people who aren't afraid, because everybody got a law license. They not trying to do this work. Because everybody talk about we want to be with the black prosecutors. No, they don't. Because they get in these courtrooms and these judges talk to them sideways and they run. And they go into somewhere where they can do less work and get more money. If you really want to do this struggle, then you will come to our offices and work. You will do the hard work, and you're not going to sit there and be scared to speak truth to power, because a lot of people are afraid. A lot of people are afraid. They're not doing this work. They don't want to do this work because guess what? It's easier to sit there and to have somebody pat you on the back and say, do a good job so you can become a judge, or eventually you might become a prosecutor because you just sit there in silence and you become part of the status quo. But I'm not doing it. I'm going to fight. And if you hear about me going to jail, hopefully one of y'all bail me out on this call, because I don't care. I'm not backing down. I'm telling you the truth, because my law license is for justice, is for human rights and dignity, and I'm not backing down no way, no how. Thank you.
Go St. Louis, go St. Louis, go St. Louis, go St. Louis.